I'd like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, June 18th, 2019. The Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at City Hall in Council Chambers. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. Balfons?
Here.
Ms. Bondo? Ms. Figdor? Ms. Davis?
Here.
Ms. Morioni? Ms. Thompson? Ms. Terraro?
Here.
Mr. Inabanza? Mr. Norris? Ms. Power-Rakowski? Mr. Samuntu? Mr. Abdirahman? And Chair Rodriguez.
Presente. And Ms. Thompson did let me know that she had a conflict tonight. She could not make it. Ms. Morioni is ill, and she could not make it tonight. Ms. Bondo is out of the country. She could not make it tonight. And Ms. Figdor also had a traveling conflict, so she will not be with us tonight. But we do have a quorum. We have the 5 of us here tonight, and we'll carry on. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. As many of you know, today would have been Assistant Superintendent Ginny Crocker's last Portland School Board meeting before officially retiring. Unfortunately, and this should be to no one's surprise, she won't be joining us tonight because she's, right up to this very last moment, she's hard at work supporting our principals. She's attending a meeting with the Presumscott Elementary Principal Hiring Panel. But I did want to recognize one last time in a formal meeting that she is retiring and say a few words. I'd like to personally congratulate Jeannie for her retirement from a career in education. And though I have only known her for a very short time in relation to her entire career, I have truly enjoyed working with her during my time here in Portland. And I consider her not only to have been a valuable asset to Portland Public Schools, but a strong supporter of public education in general. And while you'll be missed by all of us here at Portland Public Schools, you certainly deserve your retirement. Your hard work and diligence have greatly benefited our district. Your contributions supporting our principals and the daily operations of administrative staff with the guidance you provided will be sorely missed. It has always been my pleasure to work with you, and so while I'm saddened to see you go, I'm confident that you will find the same happiness in retirement that you experienced during your time here, minus the need to stay up late trying to stay awake during these boring late-night board meetings. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. Retirement will surely offer you many new opportunities, which I know you will embrace wholeheartedly, just as you did at PPS. And I don't know if any of the other board members wanted to say any other words to Jeannie tonight. Ms. Trevorrow.
So I also just wanted to congratulate Jeannie and share a little bit of my sentiments around her. I was remembering the other day back, and I think it must have been 2016 when I was serving as chair of the Finance Committee. There was a meeting where it was during the budget season when the City Council was taking up our budget and workshop. And we didn't think that we needed to prepare anything for that meeting. We had been assured that they didn't expect anything, that, for this meeting, they never want us to present anything. And so we weren't prepared with anything. But lo and behold, as soon as we got there, the first thing the mayor asked us was, do you have a presentation? And it was just Jeannie and I and the finance director at the time that were there, and we all kind of looked at each other with deer in headlights kind of look, and Jeannie just pulled the printed version of the PowerPoint of the budget presentation for that year out of her bag and approached the podium and just delivered the presentation on the fly, and she did an incredible job, I'm sure you can imagine. But it demonstrated to me what I think is the key value with Jeannie, which is that she's always willing to step up for this district. And that's why she hasn't retired yet. I know that she had her retirement celebration cruise around the coast of England last year. Hopefully, she gets to do that again, because she thought she was retiring last year, or else something just as fabulous, because she definitely deserves it.
Ms. Davis?
I also want to congratulate Jeannie on retiring essentially again, because I think she's retired several times from several different places, and we've both been involved in education in Portland, South Portland, in Maine for a number of years, and so she's somebody who's kind of always been, if not, while not working for this district, she was kind of out there and somebody I was aware of and in contact with in various ways. And I have really enjoyed getting to know her better once she came to work with the district. And as she finally retires this time, at least from this, and I think as a fellow retiree, I think there's an element of you retire and then you retire and then you retire again, and that's actually a good process. It's an opportunity to do different things, and I'm sure that she will not sit at home and kind of do nothing. She will find some other place where her skills and her talents and her interest and her energy will be useful to her community and to the state. And that she brings a wealth of experience and, as Mr. Barra said, the ability to step up. The thing that came to my mind was when she stepped up to be our interim superintendent. We didn't know we were going to need one. And that's not an easy role to be in, because you are both a caretaker, but the district was also in a place where it couldn't just stand still and not do anything for a year. We needed to keep moving, and Jeannie found that middle ground between moving forward and sort of setting direction without preempting our next superintendent, and that's a real skill to actually be able to do, and I felt that she did an excellent job at it. And the other thing I will miss is occasionally she'd give me a ride home, or we'd have a conversation somewhere, and sometimes we talked about the district, sometimes we talked about, family or retirement, or we both drive a Prius, so it could range from anywhere and anything, and I'm looking forward to continuing to occasionally having coffee with her and having a conversation as we both have more time now that we'll be retired. So congratulations, Jeannie, on a well-deserved retirement from Portland Public Schools. You made a difference for us and for our students.
Thanks. If no one has something to share from Ms. Morioni, who, like I said, could not be with us tonight, she forwarded me a note she wanted me to read. So this is from Morioni. Jeannie, as you retired, it is important that you know that you truly will be missed. You have made such a difference to Portland Public Schools. My earliest memory was when you willingly assumed the responsibility as interim superintendent when we needed you most. I was serving as board chair, and not only did you help stabilize our work, but you always did it with with a smile, and of course, providing chocolates at every meeting. It's always helped to calm everyone's nerves. You have never ceased to amaze me. Throughout your career, you have touched so many lives, both staff and students, with your warm and genuine caring. You have helped our district move forward in the renovations for our facilities, finding and supporting the best leaders for our schools, and helping our board make fair and equitable decisions. You have helped us accomplish a lot and giving a great deal of your time with boundless energy. I wish you the best as you look ahead to travel, more family time, and hopefully relaxation. If anyone deserves the best, it's you. Nice. That's really sweet. I did, if no one else had anything, I wanted to share one quick little experience that I've had with Jeannie. I shared this with the board last year after going to the MSMA annual conference in the fall. I was the only board member. I was a delegate for the Portland board, and Jeannie accompanied me. And, she's had this long career, and she's built all these relationships, and she's been around. And so we're walking through this building, and there's, these long-time educators, and everybody knew Jeannie. I mean, you cannot take 5 steps before someone's like, "Hey, Jeannie," and big hugs and kisses. And it was really cool because, like I told you guys, I felt like I was walking around with the coolest kid in school. I was like hooked up, right? To the point that later on that night, I'm in a room separate, so Jeannie's gone done something else, and I'm introducing myself to another board member from another district, and I start name dropping. Yeah, I'm here with Jeannie Crocker. You know her? But all to say though, having her join me for that conference was great. I really did feel like I had this support behind me of someone that was not only well respected and known, but that I knew was there to represent Portland Public Schools in a really positive way. So I'm forever thankful for that day and everything else that she's done to support me as a school board member and this district throughout her long career, and obviously in the other places that she's worked. So again, thank you so much for all your work, Jeannie. We're all set. Good. So next, for the report of the chair, I just wanted to share one more quick note before I pass it on to the superintendent. As many of you know, over the last week, the City of Portland has welcomed over 250 asylum seekers who crossed the southern border in the United States. And I'm proud of the way that our city has responded with an outpouring of support that included donations of over $200,000 and hundreds of folks who have applied to volunteer. The support for our newest neighbors is heartwarming. And it's not surprising that the City of Portland has stepped up in this way. And as city officials and community partners work to assist these newcomers in meeting housing and other primary needs for their families, I'm proud to have learned that over the last week, Portland Public Schools staff have already began, and are eager to assist with the screening of the young children in order to prepare them to enter public school districts wherever these families end up settling. The challenges involved with these processes are significant, and certainly add to the workload and complexity of our staff's daily responsibilities. I'm confident that we will rise to the challenge, just like the members of our community have risen, to show these families that they're welcome in our city and that their children will receive the care and services that they need. The superintendent will say more in a few moments as part of his remarks in the district's response to this situation. That's all that I have for tonight. So next, we were scheduled to have a report of the students for Deering High School, but Mr. Abdirahman is not here tonight, so we'll move on to the report of the superintendent. Mr. Botana, take it away.
Great, and I love not having to follow the student because they always do such a great job, and it makes my job that much harder. So today, jumping right in. But we start recognizing some of our exemplary students. So tonight we have with us Gabe Gomez from Casco Bay High School, who's here with his parents, Carlos Gomez and Melissa McStay. And come on up, Gabe. Imti Hassan, also from Casco Bay High School. And Imti, I forgot to ask you, is anybody here with you? Just Mr. Pierce? You can see he's the one jumping up and down in the back row. And then we have Bill Williamson, who's the market president for Bank of America here in Maine, and is also the senior vice president, senior client manager for commercial banking for Bank of America, and Rose Parsons, who's the vice president and market manager for Maine. So if you would come and join us at the front. This is our second year celebrating this tremendous partnership between Bank of America and the Portland Public Schools. The Bank of America Student Leaders Program is an 8-week internship and leadership conference program fully funded by Bank of America. This is a paid internship funded by the Bank of America, and in 2019, and this is particularly significant as we talk at the state level, at the city level about the need to make a working wage, these fine young students have had their pay increase from $10 to $15 an hour. So it is, what is considered a living wage. So thank you for Bank of America's effort to model that for other employers. Every year through the Student Leaders Program, Bank of America helps connect over 200 community-minded high school juniors and seniors to employment, skills development, and service. This year, Bank of America will connect these 280 community-minded high school juniors and seniors to skills development and service. This promising group, of which MT and Gabe will be a part, will convene in Washington, D.C. for a week for the Student Leaders Summit that will be built around three themes: serve, inspire, and change. As part of this, Bank of America is providing more than $4 million in funding this year to support nearly 3,000 summer jobs for youth and young adults throughout the Student Leaders Program, as well as summer internships for young people from different communities across the country. Student Leaders is part of the Bank of America's ongoing commitment to preparing young people for a brighter future. Bank of America looks for the next generation of community leaders, those with a passion for improving their community and turning that passion into action. Student leaders participate in the 8-week paid internship at a local nonprofit organization where they learn firsthand about the needs of the community and the critical role that nonprofits play. In addition, they will learn valuable civic, social, and business leadership skills as each student leader will attend the Student Leader Summit and explore how government, business, and the nonprofit sector work to address critical community needs. Last year, for the first time ever, the Portland, Maine market was designated a Student Leaders site, and that was through the efforts of Bill Williamson as the market president here, who's to be credited for advocating for this opportunity for Maine students. I want to point out that all public and private school students in Portland, all of our schools are eligible to apply. And I'm thrilled that both last year and this year, the honor and opportunity has been given to students from Portland Public Schools. This is a tribute to our amazing students who you will meet shortly, but also to their schools, their counselors, their teachers and principals for preparing them and supporting them in their applications. So as I mentioned earlier, our student leaders for this year are Gabriel Gomez, who is a rising senior and will intern this summer at the United Way of Greater Portland. From Principal Pierce, quote, "Gabe is an excellent student and an equally impressive human being. Gabe's self-effacing wit and impish grin," let's see that impish grin, are immediately charming. I think we would all agree with that. But his intelligence and his integrity are what hold your respect. Academically, Gabe is one of our top students. He was in the first cohort of students to earn a seal of biliteracy, and he has achieved with honors in every discipline from art to math. He has earned an A in a college math class and completed an internship in a music studio. Music has become a deep passion of Gabe's in recent years. True to character, Gabe excels whether he's playing solo or supporting others in an ensemble. Gabe is well regarded by adults and peers and will be a bridge builder in any group. And Imti Hassan just graduated from Casco Bay High School and will intern this summer at the Boys and Girls Club of Southern Maine. Again, from Mr. Pierce. Quote, "Last summer, Imti Hassan was given the position of paradigm shifter at the renowned Seeds of Peace camp. She is one of few 17-year-olds worthy of this daunting label. There's not a program or community on earth that would not benefit deeply from her exceptional, buoyant, inclusive, and yes, paradigm-shifting leadership. MT's experience as a leader is as deep as it is wide. Her relentless, affable positivity is matched by profound skills in facilitation, listening, making connections, and problem-solving. MT was the first chairperson of the Casco Bay High School Cabinet and was voted as one of her class speakers at the recent graduation. MT will be attending Bates this fall. You guys are exceptional students, exceptional leaders, and we couldn't be prouder of everything that you've achieved already and that you will go on to achieve. So I would love to recognize you now for your contributions with this certificate. So go up into that. So let's hear it for our fine students. I believe we are also doing a, Kate, are we doing the, oh, never mind. Big surprise for another day. Great. So again, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Rose, for your partnership with the Portland Public Schools. I know that you've been impressed with the quality of our students. I think that Gabe and MT are absolutely going to live up to the expectations of Bank of America. I know they're going to be tremendous contributors to the leadership cohort, and I think they're leaders for the future in this community, and I'm just incredibly grateful for the support of Bank of America on this and so many other things. Our Portland Promise makes it clear that our people are our greatest resource and that all of our goals rest on our ability to attract, support, and retain the most talented and diverse group of educators. Tonight, I would like to recognize one of Portland Public Schools' very best, Nurse Becky Bell, who's here with us tonight, and we are recognizing because she has recently obtained National Board Certification for school nursing. Becky, can you come on up? This has been a long time coming. We've had some scheduling difficulties, but I'm really, really happy that you're with us today, Becky. As everybody that follows our board meetings knows, the nationally certified credential reflects the pinnacle of competence and professionalism in the field. It reflects an educator's uncompromising commitment to their professional practice, and it requires a huge amount of work. To earn the NCSN, a registered nurse must demonstrate a high level of education, clinical practice experience, and knowledge through a rigorous process of learning, reflection, and documentation, and by opening their practice to external review and validation. And Nurse Becky exemplifies this in her everyday practice. As a nursing professional for over 40 years, we're counting the fact that as a little girl she played nurse with her dolls, she has lived the Nightingale oath in everything that she's done. In addition to the National Board Certification credential, Nurse Becky has a bachelor's in human services and a master's in nursing and nursing education. She's worked in almost every clinical specialty and has taught nursing at the post-secondary level. Her true love is community and public health. She joined Portland Public Schools in 2010 and since then has left a mark in the lives of students and staff at Paths and Casco Bay High School. We're very fortunate to have amazing nurses in the Portland Public Schools, and Nurse Bell is a wonderful example of the caring and dedicated people in that role. As superintendent, but also as a parent of a Casco Bay student who has benefited many times from your wisdom, your deep knowledge of adolescent health, and your warm and caring personal touch, I would like to personally thank you for all that you do every day for my student and all of the thousands of students whose lives you've touched. Thank you, Nurse Becky.
Thank you.
As everyone has heard by now, Portland has received an influx of asylum seekers, mostly from Central Africa. We are the public schools. We are entrusted with meeting the needs of our students, whatever they may be. Clearly, there will be new challenges associated with any new students, and a large influx of new immigrant students will be a challenge. We're looking forward to taking on those challenges, and I am confident that we will succeed because of the passion and commitment of all of our dedicated educators. It's, in essence, what we've signed on for. I would like to mention that we've designated our communications executive director, Grace Valenzuela, who's also our community partnerships coordinator, as the point person. There are so many people in our district that are passionate about meeting the needs and facing these challenges that we wanted to make sure that we had a single point of contact for people within the district, people outside of the district, to be able to coordinate their access and support for our new neighbors. Grace has been in contact with the city. We are getting ready to go out and register the students and make sure that we can get them into summer school programs to the extent that it makes sense for them to be in our summer school programs, as well as begin to figure out what is the impact on our district when the school year begins. And so, Grace, thank you so much for taking on this additional responsibility. I know it's near and dear to your heart, and I very much appreciate you doing that. On a personal note, I am so proud of Portland's response to this situation. As many of you know, I am myself a refugee. I came to this country when I was 3 years old from Cuba, and the way in which my family was welcomed and supported set me up for everything that I've been able to achieve. At the time, it was the federal government that rolled out the welcome mat and made our transition as a family with my parents, my grandparents, my siblings, and my elderly aunt a supportive and supported one. At a time when our federal government has lost its way and fails time and again to realize that the investments that were made on people like me have come back with fairly good returns, it will be no different for our new arrivals. That is why I'm so proud of the outpouring of sympathy and support for our newest neighbors. Portland is an incredibly special place, and I'm never prouder to call it my home than in this past week. Last month, we had parents and advocates come out to express concern about the move of the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf to a different location for next school year. Since then, staff have worked closely with the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf leadership to renew the Memorandum of Understanding for the 2019-20 school year. I'm grateful to East End Principal Boyd Marley and Assistant Principal Kelly Thornhill for their careful articulation of concerns and proactive leadership in developing solutions. I'm thankful for our Student Support Services Director, Deb Mullis, for Assistant Superintendent Malia Nally, and especially for Assistant Superintendent Jeannie Crocker, who, as you know, is not with us today, for their work alongside with Governor Baxter leaders to arrive at a workable agreement. We look forward to continuing to host the program at East End and addressing the challenges that were identified by East End staff over the course of this coming fall. I want to thank everyone who came out last Friday on the first of the buildings for our future projects at Lyseth Elementary School. This exciting first coincided with the end of the school year for our students, and our staff worked on Monday, June 17th, and as of today, they are enjoying their first well-earned summer vacation day. We kicked off our summer in style with the school district's 5th year running as participants in the Portland Pride Parade. Over 100 students, parents, staff, and school board members marched proudly to show our support for our LGBTQ students. As a district, we know that showing all of our students that they belong is an important part of achieving our whole student goal. I'm grateful to all who came out to march and to the thousands of well-wishers who cheered us on throughout the parade route. Finally, I am grateful to all Portland residents who came out to support our FY20 school budget. Portland has shown time and again that it supports quality schools and makes that commitment every year by voting to support our budget request. I'm grateful that this budget is behind us, and as the board knows, we're now beginning our planning for our FY21 budget, which kicked off with our Finance Committee debrief just before tonight's meeting. Because as I've learned in my 3 years here, in Portland, there is only one season, budget season. This will be the board's final business meeting of the school year. The board will meet in retreat next week to plan for the coming year and to begin my evaluation. And our next business meeting is scheduled for August 6th here at City Hall. So I would just like to thank everybody for the tremendous amount of work that went into making this a successful year, and I hope that everybody has a wonderful summer, and that for our students that you make a point of doing a little bit of reading, a little bit of reading, a little bit of reading, and maybe a little bit of writing and math thrown in for good measure over the summer. So with that, I would like to ask Assistant Superintendent Malia Nally and Director of Interventions Gail Cressy to present on our ESSA programs. We're required to annually present to the board on the direction we're taking with our federal grants program, and this year it's particularly important for the board to understand some of the fiscal cliffs that are in the horizon, and I would like to recognize Board Member Balfons, who's been serving as the board representative on the ESSA committee and was instrumental in shaping the direction for this presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Malia and Gail.
Okay. Hello. So I am just going to basically repeat what the superintendent just said. Our goal tonight is to very quickly make sure folks are oriented to the purpose of each title. For those of you who are not as familiar with this work, I know Member Davis is, but I also recognize that others don't get into the weeds here. So we want to make sure you understand what these titles are, the resources we have attached to each title here in Portland, and then specifically to give you a heads up on the impact of what we're seeing happening in terms of reduced revenue coming into Portland, and of course increased costs as it relates to staff that's in the title grants. So Gail's going to walk you through some of that background context, and then she'll talk a little bit about where we're headed with Title I, and I'll talk about the other titles as well.
Thank you, Malia. Greetings, board. Nice to see you all. Again, I am here to present sort of the background quickly of ESEA, ESSA, and an overview of Title I. So ESEA was the original Elementary and Secondary Education Act in 1965, which gets reauthorized under different names. Currently, the Every Student Succeeds Act. And these are the federal funds that come into the state and then the district to supplement the local effort. We are eligible for and will apply for funds in Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. So Title I funds is, again, a brief overview. Those are the funds that support disadvantaged youth, so funds that are targeted to schools that we prioritize and that are eligible to receive Title I funds, which is a poverty threshold of 35%. Title II funds are what are usually considered the professional development funds, so they are there to ensure effective teachers and also effective leaders. Title III funds support our English language learners, and those are for efforts above and beyond the local efforts to help students acquire English and also content at their grade level. And then under ESSA, they re-energized Title IV. Title IV used to be for safe and drug-free schools, and they were only funding competitive grants for a while in the state, and now they've revitalized that. And so there are three areas we can attack under Title IV. One is a well-rounded education, and I tend to look at this as all the areas that disappeared under No Child Left Behind. So it's your academic enrichment areas, the arts, STEM, beyond the basics, essentially. And then they've also maintained that safe schools part, so it's safe and healthy students. That's where you have a lot of your SEL work and anti-bullying, violence prevention. And then also they've tagged in, also you can use it to improve the use of technology. And this really is not so much infrastructure and hardware, but training for teachers to enhance education for students. So we do have our preliminary allocations from the department, and the big picture here is that we are receiving a reduction in funds, a pretty significant reduction in funds. Our funds are determined for Title I by the U.S. Census data, and we are seen as a city as losing poverty, and so that's having an impact on our federal funds. We have received an 8% cut in new funding this year in Title I, and we are also spending down our carryover from year to year. So we have this declining revenue situation while we have increased expenses. We have a significant number of staff in our title funds, and especially in Title I, and we've reached a point with that cut and the spending down of the carryover where our projected staffing costs coming into next year actually exceeded our allocation. So obviously, we needed to make some plans to address that, which we've started doing, and also recognize that this is not a single year solution to this, that we need to get our staffing in line with our annual allocation, so we see this as a multi-year solution. So what is the impact of this loss of revenue? We are seeing some staffing reductions as a result of this, mostly through attrition, so some resignations and retirements that we're not refilling, and then a couple of ed tech position reductions. One of the biggest areas that we're seeing and that I'm worried about is we are not able to project forward funding out of Title I for summer 2020. So normally we would build those funds into the upcoming budget and use those as carryover, so we know in February when we start planning that those funds are secure, and we do not have the funds to do that and carry those forward at this time. And then to prioritize staffing, and you'll see where those priorities are, we also needed to cut back on other areas supported under the titles. So commitment to professional development and adult learning, any non-staff related expenses, we really trim significantly, really to where we're just funding staffing. So we have supported some supplemental instructional materials, tech-enabled, and we're going to have to scale those back as well. So this is just a slide that highlights the issue around summer, gives you a little more detail. We do have multiple funding sources for summer, but this is the picture of what Title I is currently funding and where we don't currently have a plan going forward into the summer of 2020. So you can see the number of hours, number of students, number of schools, and the funds that we have set aside for this summer for summer school. So that's sort of the funding picture and what we're starting with. And then we move forward into planning for next year's, the upcoming grant application. So we have brought our best thinking forward to a number of groups to get feedback. We have the ESSA advisory stakeholder group. So we have representatives from teachers to administrators, board members that we brought together to get feedback. That went before the Parent Partnership Committee. Our academic teams had a look and provided input. We obviously had some face-to-face meetings with our Title I building leaders to get their priorities given the loss of revenue. Principals and building leaders were kept up to date through our Friday footnote, and then we're moving into the period of public comment after tonight. So for Title I, despite the cuts, we are prioritizing some important areas. So we made the move last year to use our federal funds in Title I to prioritize eligible elementary schools. And so we are continuing to prioritize those 7 elementary schools. We did not choose to, move a school out of Title I. We just brought them in last year, so we felt that was important to maintain that support in all 7 schools. In terms of staffing and a strategy, we're prioritizing that embedded professional development we get by funding coaches in the Title I schools. So our math coaches, our literacy coaches, and SEL coaches. We also have staff that provide direct supplemental instruction during the school day to students who have that need, and we are maintaining staff in that area. We have a commitment to supporting our homeless youth. That's one of our required set-asides, but we do it anyway, so we have that commitment there. We are using funds for leadership of the program, and we have Rise and Shine at East End. That's sort of unique, and we support leadership there. And then we have our 1% set aside for family engagement. So those are all things we are able to fund. The other thing that we worked on this year and were able to preserve, although it does not mean increased funding for these schools, but it does mean the flexibility and blending of funding that comes with school-wide status. So we've historically had 4 elementary schools or higher poverty elementary schools that have had school-wide status where all students are considered Title I, and you can really use those funds to do global school improvement efforts. And Ocean Ave and Rowe have gone through that process this year. It's been a year-long process that's involved this comprehensive data review, stakeholder input from staff and families and community members. They need to describe how they're meeting all of the school-wide program requirements, and then they establish goals and strategies which become part of their school success plan. And so we are moving forward with those applications. They're due on July 1st, and we've sent a draft up to DOE to get their feedback. So we're hoping and we're feeling good about those schools, and then 6 of our 7 schools will be school-wide schools. Great. I'll turn it over to Malia for Title II.
Thought you were on a roll. You're going to keep going. So just very briefly, Title II, like Gail mentioned, the proposal so far is that we would maintain staffing that's in Title II. So we're really looking at, again, embedded professional development through our middle school strategists and an IB coach in the elementary. And then we have a list of priorities as it relates to leadership development, if for some reason funds became available. But right now we're just planning on maintaining the staff that's there, in addition to the portion we have to give to the privates. And then in Title III, I think the big thing to call out here is a real focus on language support for new arrivals in the high needs languages. So Carlos and the team have been doing a lot of tremendous work to really realign and make sure that the focus of our staffing in this title is really targeted toward additional language support for students, and specifically making sure that we have those supports in the languages that reflect our current student population. So that's the work that's happening in Title III. And then in Title IV, again, to continue investing like we have in terms of people and positions. So this is where we're getting a portion of our clinical director, who you've met, Chris Reiger. You've met Fiona Hopper. She's the teacher leader who's been working on equity, social studies, and the Wabanaki studies in particular. And then we have a little bit going towards some of that use of technology. This is actually in the spirit of supporting professional learning and collaboration across the district. If you recall from the earlier slide, there's some possible money where that we can kind of use here in alignment to our Portland Promise goals and priorities. And so we have a list of things here as it relates to curriculum outside of the core ELA and math, and some of the equity and social emotional learning things as well. So I think quickly, just in summary, these funds supplement the local budget. What we do within each project needs to be research-based and needs to be clearly aligned to our comprehensive needs or our plan, the Portland Promise. Because of the census data showing declining poverty in Portland, we are getting less money this year and in the future. And at the same time, as you all know, staff costs have grown, and so we are needing to look this year for some creative solutions, and then wanted to enlist your thought partnership over the long term and how do we solve for the situation that we find ourselves in. So that's what we have. Are we going to do questions, Superintendent? Okay.
If you guys have any questions. I was going to ask one quick question more, just to clarify. I probably just don't understand some of this with too much detail. But so when we say that because of the census information that the city of Portland seems to be less poor, or statistically speaking, is it census data that comes from? So it's not like in other areas where we've gone through the applications or like free and reduced lunch numbers and things that are more like kind of shift. So it's these numbers is not something that's questionable.
No, because we're an urban center in the state and of a certain size, our allocation comes directly from the federal government. Smaller districts, most districts in Maine, they use free and reduced lunch, but ours is the extrapolation of the census data.
Okay.
But can I also point out that all of Maine lost money? So we're losing a significant amount, and actually disproportionately so, but that the state of Maine also received less money from Title I this year.
Yeah. I don't think I have any other questions, at least not right now.
Can I just thank Gail and Malia for their hard work on this? I know that they've had a very active group that has met numerous times to begin to put the plans together for this year. I think it was really important for us to put this in front of the board because, as you see, there are some significant challenges ahead, and I think it's important for the board to understand that as we move forward, we're going to need to find alternative sources for some really significant investments that we make as a district that we believe are central to our ability to do the work, particularly around our coaching strategies and things along those lines. So I wanted to make sure that we surfaced that early for the board as part of the planning process as we go into next year.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Where are we at?
Minutes?
I got it. All right. I think that concludes the superintendent's report, right?
I'm sorry. That does conclude my report.
Report of the Secretary, consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of June 4th, 2019. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second. Mr. Balfans, thank you. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of June 4th, 2019, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting with the majority. I'm lost. Report of the committees. We'll start with curriculum and ed planning. Mr. Balfans.
Great, thank you. So the curriculum committee, you'll see tonight, is bringing forward the revised graduation requirements policy. So we worked on that, staff worked on that, and the committee reviewed that and had some suggestions on making it internally consistent with the spirit of proficiency-based grading. And I think the policy is a solid policy at this point, and you'll see that later tonight. And then later on, our next curriculum committee meeting will be in September 17th. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Balfans. For Operations Committee, Ms. Thompson's not here, but the superintendent will give us an update.
Yeah, the Operations Committee met last on May 2nd. They meet again tomorrow. The work of the Operations Committee has been centered around a couple of issues. One is the sustainability policy, and particularly around energy efficiencies and solarize. And so tomorrow's meeting is going to be another deep dive into those, the issues associated with moving towards a significant investment in solar energy in our schools. And then the other topic that the Operations Committee is beginning to discuss is the possibility of changing our beginning and end times at schools, particularly around moving back the start time for our middle schools and high schools to sort of reflect what research tells us about the learning cycles of adolescents. So that is a conversation that is just beginning. We don't expect that it's going to be something that gets resolved in a minute, but it is a conversation that the Operations Committee is engaged in.
Thank you, Mr. Watana. Finance and Personnel, Ms. Trevor.
The budget passed on June 11th at referendum with 71% of the vote. So that was positive, and we've concluded our budget season. And as the superintendent alluded to earlier, we've started our next budget season with the meeting that we just had prior to this meeting tonight. At 5:30, the Finance Committee met, and the topic of the meeting was to debrief the budget. We talked about what we thought went well this last year and things to think about for next year. We do have a retreat next week, and we talked about how some of that conversation is kind of going to be a carryover from what we discussed at the Finance Committee in terms of looking forward. We did get projections for funding for next year from the state. And so we are kind of looking at a projected loss in revenue from the state next year. So we'll be talking about how we grapple with that and the process that we take going forward. I'll also note that our new finance director attended the meeting, Miranda Fasulo. So those of us that were there got to meet, she's in the back of the room there. Welcome. And it was our last meeting with our old finance director, Alicia Gardner, who's moving on to work at Colby. So we were able to have them both present so that we can kind of wrap up as well as look forward. So that was nice to have. And I think that we don't have a meeting scheduled yet, but we'll be looking for that in August. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. For Policy and Legislative Committee, Ms. Davis.
The legislature, as people are probably aware, is winding down with the budget passed and, legislation either being funded or not funded or passed or not passed. So things are quiet on that front. There were a fair number of bills that we tracked. We worked very closely with our city's, the City Council Legislative Committee, and I think that was very valuable for us. So that the board and the committee was well aware of, and the superintendent, of the different legislative initiatives, bills that had been submitted, and we were able to weigh in as we felt appropriate, or to lend our voice to other larger groups of school boards or schools. So I think that has been a successful season. We have a policy committee meeting tomorrow night, and then we'll take our July break, and there'll be another meeting in August. Tomorrow night, we're talking about youth engagement partners, community use of building facilities policy, review of the policies in Book A, smoking policy, and the implementation of LD 798, which is the policy that will require vaccinations, or change the requirements around vaccinations for children to attend school. So that's our agenda, and then we'll take our July break and meet again in August. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Public Affairs, Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you, Chair. We had some scheduling conflicts, so we were not able to meet last week as scheduled. But we did have a very productive conversation at our Coffee with Constituents event several weeks ago, mostly centered around sexual violence reporting and sex education. And so there was quite a bit of energy from the board members there in attendance and to address some of the issues that were raised by the members of the public at that meeting. And so I expect that at our next public affairs meeting, we will take that up when that is scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. For the Appointments Committee, Ms. Maureen is not here tonight, but I did want to point out later on our agenda tonight, we have a first read on a policy for regulations regarding the advisory committee members. So that's something that the Appointments Committee has been working on, and Ms. Morioni has been waiting to get some input from legal counsel before bringing this up. And I'm not entirely sure when they're meeting again, so we'll try to get that information from her and pass it along. If there's any other member concerns or committees to report, now would be a good time.
I will point out that the District Advisory Building Committee and the LISEF Building Level Advisory Committee are meeting this Thursday, so that work is moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Wadana. Moving along, consent items. Will the superintendent please speak to the item?
Yes, under Board Policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district. As required by that policy, all of the donations are listed in the board memo accompanying this item, and as has been the practice, each donor will receive a written contribution acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude as well as for their tax purposes. So I would like to thank the generous contributors to the Portland Public Schools who have made donations of durable goods of substantial value and historical or commemorative significance. And for this meeting, those include for Riverton Elementary School, where they received 2 new bicycles to be awarded to deserving students from Martha Frost of Horace Mann in Falmouth. And also Riverton Elementary School has received a mini refrigerator and classroom supplies from the Philopticos Society of the Holy Trinity Church here in Portland. So we'd like to thank them for their generous contributions and for their support of our work. I also want to point out that beginning today, we are going to, on a quarterly basis, also do an update from the foundation on the donations that they have received. So I'm going to ask Foundation Executive Director Kate Snyder to come up and share some of the amazing contributions that they've been able to secure over this past, I think this time it's the half of the year leading up to today. So Kate, take it away.
Thank you, Superintendent Botana. So starting now, the foundation will report gifts to you quarterly. This is a chance to update you all and also to publicly thank all of our community members who support education in a variety of ways. We will provide a list of all donors who are at or above the $2,500 mark, and that's what we consider a major donor. We'll give you a brief explanation of the gift. So we're keeping the list somewhat short, but I want you to know that we will continue to thank every donor at every level throughout the year by writing a thank you note and acknowledgement of their gift, which they can use for tax purposes as well, and by listing every donor in our annual report, which is published each year and distributed to you all right after Labor Day. Tonight's report will be a little bit longer than usual because we thought we would do 6 months worth of reporting, so January until now, and rather than just the 3 months worth. So thanks for your patience, and thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to call out these generous gifts so that you and the whole community are aware of the incredible generosity that so many individuals, businesses, and foundations make in support of Portland Public Schools by way of the foundation. I'm going to hand out a list. So these are mostly in order for you. We were planning to have a big check presentation with the folks from Bank of America who were here earlier this evening. That's why I have them right at the top of the list. They forgot the big check, so we're going to do that some other time and get a photo. But I wanted to point out this evening, on the heels of Bank of America's incredible investment in the schools here in Portland and elsewhere, that they have also made a $2,500 gift in support of the capacity campaign for the foundation. So I want to thank them for that. So you can see this major gift category amount is totaled at the top of the page that I've given you. So that's roughly $336,000. And again, this report does not include all of the incredible gifts at or below $2,499, of which there are many. So I don't want to forget those, but I just want to note that for your sake and for brevity's sake, we're looking at the big ones here this evening. So I want to note that the Alfred L. Padula Estate has made an investment of over $124,000 towards sustainable energy projects. John Burgess has made a contribution of nearly $28,000 toward the Rising Tide Fund, which is a fund that supports summer learning for students. Unum, you're going to see several gifts from Unum. They just made a significant gift of over $25,000 towards summer school education for Portland Public Schools middle school students. The Lennox Foundation made a gift of $25,000 in support of the capacity campaign, teacher grants, and professional development for the foundation. LL Bean contributed $21,000 toward the middle school partnership with Ripple Effect. The Sam Cohen Foundation granted $18,000 in support of the district's equity work. The Ensign Bickford Foundation, which is the parent company for Envirologics here in Portland, contributed $16,000, half of which will go to fund the STEM Expo that typically happens in November, and half towards teacher grants. The Bangor Savings Bank Foundation granted a $25,000 award toward capacity building for the foundation. Half of that will be used in this fiscal year, and half will be reported to you in FY20. Unum made a $10,000 match toward the Reiki School Fund in response to an employee gift of half that amount. They do a 2-to-1 match on some of their gifts. The Verizon Foundation granted $10,000 in support of STEM investments, primarily focused at science curriculum at the elementary level. Fund for Teachers invested over $6,000 toward a partnership that we have with them, where the foundation pays half and Fund for Teachers pays half in grant awards for teachers who apply to do summer work. Catherine and Todd Alexander, $5,000 toward the Reiki School Fund. The Eagle Point Fund contributed $5,000 toward the capacity campaign. You're going to hear a little bit about this capacity campaign a little bit later this evening. Unum, another $4,386 directed to Presumpscot School in support of books. The family of Amanda Rowe contributed $3,500 in support of the Rowe School Aquarium. Another $3,400 from Unum in support of Presumpscot School. Kaz Prack Homes, $3,000 in support of Solarize. Kepware gave $3,000 in support of STEM investments, again directed to elementary science. KPMG gave a $3,000 gift in kind that was just received about a week ago at Riverton School. And what that gift was KPMG gave Riverton the opportunity to purchase $3,000 worth of books at very reduced cost, so that every student could go home with 2 new books that are theirs for the summer. Seaport Credit Union contributed $2,500 toward the Visionary campaign. Alyssa and Alan Armstrong, $2,500 toward Solarize, and J.B. Brown, a $2,500 gift toward the capacity campaign.
Thank you, Kate.
See you in September.
Actually, we'll see you in a little bit.
I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
So next, for the board focused on educational issues, we're going to have a pre-K implementation update. Superintendent, are you setting up? Or
Yep. So tonight, we're presenting on the status of the implementation of our pre-K expansion. As you know, the board supported an expansion of four-year-old programming this coming year, and now that the budget is behind us and the implementation looms, we thought it would be helpful to level set with the board in terms of where we are in addressing some of the challenging conditions that we face and updating you on what you can expect to see next year and beyond. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Malia Nally. Today's the all Malia show.
Yeah, lucky you guys. Alrighty. So yeah, this should be fairly brief, but like the superintendent mentioned, we know that people are interested in how this is progressing, and some questions have come up, so we wanted to make sure to clarify. So this is a recall for board members and perhaps for community members, or maybe an update, but if you all remember, this is what we agreed to after much discussion and work together and with the community. And so our long-term plan is that we will provide before and aftercare options on a sliding scale for families, transportation for students, capacity to coordinate, oversee, and ensure quality programming across the public program, that we will transition any community partner teachers and ed techs onto the PEA contract, that will provide the special education ELL services and do ongoing evaluation of the program. So those were the big components of the long-term strategy that we agreed to earlier this year. And so this is the action plan, if you will, or our implementation plan, short term and then into next year. So the big focus for this coming year is opening 2 additional classrooms and staffing up. So those are the big areas of focus. So the new classrooms are being added at Rowe and East End community schools. We are hiring the director of pre-K to oversee the program. This position will be a mix of strategy, coordination, coaching, supervision. Everyone I've talked to about it said it's about 5 jobs packed in one, and I said that's how we roll at central office. So we have an offer out and are very excited about that. So that's been a huge push, and hopefully we'll have good news very soon. We also have to hire staff for the 2 new classes, so four people total, 2 teachers, 2 ed techs. Positions are posted. We're hiring the ELL pre-K teachers who will float around and serve all of the programs. We have those posted as 3 half-time positions right now. We're also working to bring community partners onto the contract. Extending the day is another focus, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, and then providing the Metro passes for transportation. So those are the big areas of focus right now. Next year, we're going to be putting our attention toward the full year extended day options, a more robust transportation offering, yet again opening 2 more classes, figuring out some of the collaboration with community partners that are going to take a little bit more time and work by our director, and starting to look more deeply into the curriculum assessment and pedagogy that's happening within the program right now. So just a few more kind of points on the this year plan. So we're in process right now of launching classrooms. This requires, purchasing new furniture. I'm learning about sensory tables and all these things that go into a pre-K classroom. Mats for rest time. So we're busy figuring that out, as well as making sure we have enough curriculum and assessment materials to outfit these classrooms. Hiring I mentioned already, so offers out, and we've got these 7 other positions posted. Community partners, we're in the process of figuring out how to bring teachers onto the contract. That is a, highly complex transition. And for these teachers, there's changes. I think there's positive things folks talked about in terms of compensation, benefits, package, representation. But there's differences for them too in terms of what they're used to for hours, parameters, things like that. So that's a big set of conversations that are ongoing to help people understand the new expectations and kind of boundaries and parameters around that. We are also working on figuring out how to think about hiring, supervision, coaching, et cetera. So in the case of the community partners, if teachers are on our contract, what does that mean in terms of the community partner director's role, which historically has been very clear. And so that's a huge body of complicated work. And then finally, I just wanted to call out that we are not moving the Head Start Opportunity Alliance teachers onto the contract immediately. That one in particular is very complicated, and so the conversation with them is about whether or not they would remain a partner in the program. And so that's something that our pre-K director, myself, and the team will be working with them on in the coming year. As far as extended day goes, so in making this transition to an extended day, we're thinking about it in a phased approach. First, moving all PPS-run classrooms to full day, full school day, and then eventually adding on the options for before school and after school care. These are just a handful of the sort of issues at hand when we're trying to figure this out. So I cannot kind of say enough how complex this is in terms of all the moving parts, the consideration of the unique regulations for pre-K students, et cetera. But basically, we're having to figure out coverage, which we hadn't had previously, working in the rest time, the additional snack time, the drop-off and pickup times were a little bit staggered because of the unique needs, which we're having to do some workarounds on. There are also things like figuring out recess, and this whole schedule becomes a lot more tricky with a full day. And pre-K students aren't supposed to be on the playground with first grade students. So there's just a lot of issues in there that I personally never imagined would have as much kind of components to it. So I'm very enthusiastic about having a person to take this on, who's got the time and the expertise. But this is what I'm working on with teachers and administrators right now. The PATHS program as well, just as I mentioned there, we don't have, their hours are different. So for example, we don't have secure entrance and exit, especially exit at the end of the day in terms of who's typically in the office, manning the doors, all this kind of stuff. So we are we after a lot of conversation and work, our intention or our plan rather is to extend that full day for PPS run classrooms. So at our schools, Riverton, Rowe, Presumpscot, East End, and Peaks, we will provide the sort of typical school day. It will match the hours of the school where they are housed, and we'll be providing coverage for the lunch and planning time that our teachers have via their contract. We're going to be working on the partnership plans this year. So that will be a task our director takes on. And so that PATHS program is one that will keep status quo for now because there are so many other complexities to figuring that out. So basically, community-run programs are status quo, and that's a big body of work to figure out those partnerships. PPS-run classrooms will match school day schedules. And then the extended day before and after, our goal is to have that up and offered by January of 2020. And so, there's a variety of things we want to explore in terms of rec, the ed tech idea, and so there's a lot in that. And so we're saying by January 2020, our goal is to have that as an offering. And then I just wanted to mention to folks, I know board members have gotten some questions, that we'll be sending a letter to families who have seats in the program at the end of this week, helping them understand, again, here's your program, and this is the hours of the day and what to expect, and also indicating if they qualify for free and reduced lunch that we will provide them with a Metro Pass. Finally, I just wanted to give you a quick update on enrollment. So we're fully enrolled in both of our Rowe classrooms, one of our East End classrooms, and all of our partner sites. We have some openings that are listed here at East End, Presumpscot, and Riverton. In terms of not low income, we track this because, as I think you all recall, our goal is to have the demographic mix of the program reflect that of the district, and so we're just monitoring for that. We have historically gotten a lot of not low-income families who are applying earlier on, so if we just didn't look at that at all, we might end up with a program that was not serving our low-income families, and definitely we all know this is a key equity strategy for us, so we look at that pretty carefully. So that's where we're at with enrollment. And I think that's it. So our questions, you want to do some questions? Great.
Do anyone have any questions? I have a question. Give me a second. So really just kind of clarifying. So you mentioned a letter that we're going to send out to the parents of the children that are currently enrolled. Can you just tell me, if I'm a parent and I have a child coming into pre-K next year, can you tell me what I can expect that's going to be different in September and then again in January? From a parent's point of view, like just give it to me like
In January?
Yeah, from 2020, yeah. Like what do you think you'll have in place in January that will be different for me in September?
So an option to sign up for before and after care, which we intend to be on a sliding scale in terms of payment. I have to acknowledge that all of this is much more complex than I imagined. So what I'm hearing from pre-K directors around the city is, there's just a lot that goes into both who can work with the pre-K, all sorts of issues around what's appropriate in terms of structure, ratios. And then there's just, finding people that would do those portions of time. So, I have those caveats that I just want to be honest about, but what we're saying is that we can't promise that by September, but the goal is to have that available by January. And again, that would be parent to parent, before before the school day and after day options to extend it, like we have for rec for K through 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, the partner classrooms that we currently have will remain status quo for now.
Correct.
And that, like you said, just because of the complexity of it, we probably don't even really have a timeline of when we can expect that to change.
Well, I think that will be one of the director's priorities for this year, is to figure out sort of the different variables around the partnership. So that goes from how do we think about hiring supervision to the schedule of the day and how to incorporate that. So that would be by next September, when we get the another 2 classrooms, we would have a solid understanding of how those partnerships would evolve and how to bring them into those extended day options for families.
Perfect. And then one last thing. I think, I'm sorry, Mr. Boffins, do you have a question? Do you want me to finish? Okay, sorry. So I understand that as families have been registering, that they have been giving the explanation that you just shared with us, so that they have been sort of kind of kept in the loop of what to expect? Or how have we been communicating with those families,
we haven't had a ton of communication. So Lon on our team makes the call to let people know that they have a seat. And so she's definitely not communicated. We have extended day, or if she has, it's been a misunderstanding, because we've always known that was going to be a longer term planning process. I think if anything's been communicated, it's that we would have the school day, the length of the school day. And there was some confusion. I think there's some parents here who had some questions, because as we were digging into this, I had concern that we couldn't even get that pulled off by September. So there was some kind of holding off on making that commitment after that was out there that we were going for the full day, which is why we're going to send a letter and just make sure it's clear for all the families. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. And Mr. Boffins, go ahead.
What's the timeline look like for the pre-K director as far as application, process, interviews?
Oh, sorry. I mentioned before, we have an offer out. So we've already completed the interview process. And if the person accepts, the target start date is July 1, but that would be a conversation with that person. Yeah.
Oh, look who walked in. Any other questions?
Jeannie.
Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the enrollment and the schools that are fully enrolled. Do they also have wait lists, or
Yeah.
where do we stand in regard?
Yeah, we have a little over 50 people on the wait list right now. And so one of the things we are doing is we're going through that wait list and offering the option of these other schools, since we don't have like if every school doesn't have a pre-K. So we have like sending schools like kind of logical patterns, but it's not set in stone the way, K through 5 would be. So we are calling families to see if they'd be interested, for example, in the Presumpscot or the Riverton program. But anyway, yeah, so we have the wait list, and it's around a little over 50 people right now. Yep.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll just say that, clearly this is an incredibly challenging, piece of work to advance. So I'm excited too when we get the pre-K director. Certainly I know that your workload has been, I don't think I can figure out a word to explain it, but I certainly wouldn't want to have that level of workload. So I'm excited that we will have somebody that specifically will be helping us with this. And I clearly understand the challenges to it. So I just hope that we stay the course and that we avoid as many issues as possible, and we continue to communicate as best as possible with families, and then we move forward. This is a big deal. This is important work. We want to do it right.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm thrilled. I think we're going to have an incredible leader and great educators in the program. So once we get all those pieces in place, I feel like it's going to be really awesome for the community.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd just like to echo that, Malia. I know that there's a lot that goes into getting something like this off the ground, and I'm always humbled by your wisdom in terms of, how to go about these things, and your sort of focus on let's get kids enrolled now, and then let's get a director and get the right person to be able to dedicate the time to that is absolutely dead on, and so thank you for your work on that.
Great. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Excuse me, old business. Consideration and action to authorize the superintendent to sign the memorandum of understanding between Portland Public Schools and the Foundation for Portland Public Schools. Is there a motion? Ms. Trevorrow, second by Mr. Balfans. Will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
Yes. Briefly, I earlier said that this is the Al Malia show. It really is the Al Malia and Kate show. So now I'm going to ask Executive Director of the Foundation for Portland Public Schools, Kate Snyder, to come up and talk about this next iteration of the Memorandum of Understanding between the board and the foundation. And we're extremely excited to be here for the third iteration of the MOU.
Thank you. So again, I'm Kate Snyder, and I invited Josh Rent, who is the incoming president of the board of the Foundation for Portland Public Schools, to join me this evening and say a couple of words. We've actually been at this together for the last 3.5, almost 4 years. And so I wanted to just also take a minute to thank a couple of Foundation board members in addition to Josh, who are here this evening. We've got Sarah Fortin in the audience, as well as, where'd he go? Hamza Khan, who's a new board member, was here. He must have had to go. And we also have our summer intern from Whitman College with us this evening. Her name is Claire Maurer. And so I'm standing before you tonight because you are considering signing a new MOU to take effect July 1st, 2019, and to stay in effect until June 30th, 2021. And I want to thank you for your consideration of this MOU and talk just for a minute or so about what it means. So this is, in addition to the school board policy that recognizes the existence of the Foundation for Public Schools, this is the contract that sets out the obligations that we have to one another, the relationship that we have, and the alignment between the school district and the foundation. And this work was very intentionally laid about 4 years ago. as a task force had been brought on to kind of bring forward the making real of a recommendation in the 2015 Budget and Revenue Advisory Task Force. So we are a continuation of work that began in the school district in 2013 or 14 to bring a whole lot of community members together to make some recommendations for positive change in terms of diversification and expansion of revenues for the school district. And it's really been my pleasure to be a part of this work up until now. The mission of the Foundation for Portland Public Schools is to generate philanthropic support to enhance educational opportunities for present and future students in Portland's public schools. And when I think about the mission, which I do every day, I think about those words for present and future students. And what I believe in so strongly is creating sustainable assets for our community. And when I think about my work, I think about it in terms of today and the students that are in Portland Public Schools today, but I also think about the work in the terms of what are we creating that will benefit students in the future. And to me, what that really means is that the foundation will be around, and it will continue to grow, and it will continue to be a meaningful revenue-generating and community partnership asset for the school district. So we're still in our youth, and we're making our way, I think, toward really positive impacts that will continue for the community. The foundation accomplishes the mission with an all-volunteer board of directors and one full-time paid staff person. And the MOU governs the relationship that the district has with the one staff person. And as many of you know and have heard from me before, education institutions that invest in philanthropy through their departments of development, advancement, or through foundations are making a real commitment to expansion and diversification of revenue. We appreciate the district's support of this work, and we hope that we are being true to the spirit of the work, which is exponentially growing each year in benefit to the district. Our philanthropy sources, as you know, include corporate and business donors, foundation grants and gifts, and individual donors. The foundation also administers campaigns, appeals, and events. I also want to point out, as I referenced earlier, that we've had a successful capacity building fundraising campaign this fiscal year, and our intent is to be able to hire a second staff person for the next 2 fiscal years, so FY20 and 21. The funding for this position will come solely from foundation fundraising efforts. This is not included in the MOU. We believe so strongly that there are opportunities that are unable to be fully realized with just one staff person. And as all of you know, this work is really about the development of relationships, the maintenance of relationship, and the care and stewarding of our donor partners in this work. And so we really believe that a second staff person will help to achieve the exponential growth that we believe is possible, and to achieve our mission more fully. We know that education institutions generate meaningful philanthropy in support of education. We know that they invest meaningfully in their advancement and development efforts. And so we want to work together with the district to continue what we've got and grow it. And so that's what we've been able to do. We've been successful in our capacity building campaign, and our plan is to develop a hiring committee this summer and be able to actually make a hire in September. So the MOU before you continues the Portland Public Schools' commitment to support one staff position, the executive director for the foundation. It does not support any additional staff, nor does it provide for the administrative costs that we invest in the work of the 501c3. And so I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna ask Josh Rent to say a couple of words, and I hope that you'll support this motion this evening.
Thank you, Kate. I would be remiss if I didn't thank the board for all your hard work. It's much appreciated. I'm a business owner, a father, a husband. I see the amazing work day in and day out in the buildings. I recommend everyone spend a little time in some of these buildings. I was at Jeannie's retirement party. Was that last week, Jeannie? And yet she's still here. That's been my experience in Portland. We can't do this work without your support. so I hope you'll support the motion. We're a volunteer organization. We're working hard. I appreciate your vision. This is different than a lot of other school districts, and it's important work. Superintendent Bontano has been a driving force behind this, and I'll leave it at that. We have an amazing board. We have an amazing executive director. There are better things to come. You know, the list is impressive from where we were a couple years ago, and in 5 years, it will be more impressive. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your work, and I hope you'll support this motion.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Excuse me. Seeing none, any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Seeing none, I'll say real quick that I look forward to supporting this motion and look forward to continuing to see how the foundation continues to support Portland Public Schools. I think the list that you shared with us as a report, this is really impressive stuff, and I think it's a great idea. I'm glad that we're going to be getting quarterly reports and put it out here so we can see what you guys have been up to. I think that's a really, really important step for us to take on. So I'm looking forward to it. Having said that, all those in favor of authorizing the superintendent to sign the memorandum of understanding between Portland Public Schools and the Foundation for Portland Public Schools, please indicate. It's unanimous with the student voting with the majority. Thank you. Thank you guys for the presentation.
Can I just quickly extend my thanks to Kate and to the board, Josh, Sarah, and all the other board. And actually, Derek is a member of the board, and we forgot he's back there representing the... So this is an amazing group of people. I have been so privileged to have the opportunity to work with Kate and with the board. I think that Josh saying that I've been the driving force, I think there's no truth to that. Kate and the board are the driving force of this work. Tremendous vision for what the foundation can be. And again, this is a credit to this board and the board that sat in those seats before, because this is the third iteration of the Foundation Memorandum of Understanding, and it's that vision that is now being realized through the driving work of Kate and the board. The transition from Portland Education Foundation to Foundation for Portland Public Schools was strategically designed to signal that this is a foundation that is closely aligned with the mission of the school district. The capacity building campaign is, again, a very specific effort to recognize that, as you saw with the early childhood work that we talked about earlier, that it takes resources to be able to either carry a program out or to be able to, in this particular case, to develop the maximum level of resources that we can achieve. And so the foundation took that on with gusto, and here we are. We're ready to hire somebody to support the work of the foundation. And again, Kate always refers to it as exponential. So I don't know what the exponent is, but I know that it's more than one. So I think that that we are very much looking forward to the additional capacity of the foundation to be able to raise the level of corporate support, corporate and philanthropic support that is out there and looking for an outlet in the school system. So, Kate, board, thank you very much.
Next, consideration and action to revise policy IKF, graduation requirements. Is there a motion? Ms. Trevorrow, second by Mr. Balfons. Will the superintendent speak to the motion, or we're still on the superintendent nodding?
I'm just going to turn it over to Malia.
Okay, so on the other end of the spectrum, my mind in the right grade span here. great. So the goal here is pretty basic. Board members, you have in front of you a copy of the revised policy, which includes redlining, just so you can see very clearly where revisions were made. So I'm hoping just to point out where the small changes are, give you a little bit of rationale behind them, and then answer any questions that you have. I also want to note there's high school principals in the audience with us tonight to step forward if questions come up and help talk a little bit more about this. So first, I just want to say what's not changing, which is most of it. So that's kind of the first thing to understand is, by and large, it's very similar to what you saw and approved last year. A couple major things to note are that the credit-based requirements for rising seniors are indicated, and then we're just rolling up the next grade level, which we've been doing for multiple years now, to reflect that they will graduate on the proficiency-based requirements. So rising seniors will have credits, and the rising 9th, 10th, and 11th graders will have the proficiency requirements. In terms of what does that mean, I'm aware of the fact that there's a lot of confusion within the community, kind of not just Portland, but across the state and in other places. So I just wanted to make sure you all understand from a graduation policy perspective, the only thing that kind of makes this different and distinct from the credit-based system is that there's the additional requirement that students have to master baseline learning standards in order to get the diploma. So that's really literally the only difference. So any kind of ideas and things you've heard about pedagogical practice that gets associated with proficiency-based learning, that's not really, that's pedagogy, and those are choices and decisions in terms of how people instruct. The policy itself is really just saying all students, in order to get their graduation diploma, have to master the baseline standards. In terms of why we remain committed to that component and that type of a diploma, there's lots of reasons, a few here. One, we just think it's logical that earning a credit, or in the system we call it an up, a unit of proficiency, should mean that students have mastered the learning standards that were taught. So it just seems to make good common sense. Secondly, we think about it in terms of our Portland promise, and our promise to our students and their families is that they will leave our district prepared and empowered for a productive post-secondary path. Therefore, we think that the diploma should mean that a student has the skills and knowledge to be college and or career ready. And in terms of how we think about that at the very baseline level, it's that any of our students who hold a diploma can get into SMCC without needing remediation. And then finally, we see a strong link to our equity goal. We believe, our first learning belief, which you may recall, is that we hold all students to high standards and provide them with the supports they need to get there. And so this requirement is not just that you can kind of do your time, get your credits in lots of different ways, but rather that you are really sincerely learning and mastering certain skills and knowledge, which we know will prepare you for college and career and life. Okay? So then, just to point your attention to where the changes do exist. First, there's just some minor editing tweaks that, after you read it 5 million times, you see in there. So those don't have much meaning, but just wanted to acknowledge that. Secondly, where you see a larger section crossed out, we are removing the requirement to track learning experiences for each year of a student's high school experience, but we're retaining the spirit of the extended learning opportunities concept. So right now, and the principals are in the audience in case you have additional questions on this basically amounts to an administrative burden and task, but doesn't substantially enhance the learning experience for students, that they're, we're having to figure out how do you track that you had your 4 math experiences and this and that. So we believe that the other requirements in terms of the number of ups you have to get across the disciplines get at the concept of a range of disciplines that students are exposed to and learning about. And again, board members had great feedback about not wanting to lose the concept that students can learn units of proficiency outside the building walls, and so that's still in here, but we're just taking out that tracking learning experiences requirement. And then also just kind of a note here, we talk about there's a change from mastering or meeting all the standards to passing the standards for now, and that's just acknowledging that our system is still growing in terms of its capacity to provide the additional support so that all students can meet the standards. And so as we build out better supports that will get all of our students there, our kind of requirement now is passing the standard, and eventually it will be meeting the standard. And so those are the updates that we wanted to point out, and then of course take any questions that you have. Far back.
Standard instead of standard.
If you have any questions.
Sure, if she, yeah. That was the one.
Ms. Atkinson?
Sure.
Thank you. I wanted to ask on that last point there, the adjusting the language from mastering to passing standards for now. Could you go a little deeper on what the distinction is?
Yeah, and I'd invite the high school principals to join me on this one, if you want, after you hear me. Yeah, so I don't want to get so kind of wonky in this, but basically when we, for every graduation standard, we have a scoring criteria rubric, which delineates what it looks like to meet that standard, exceed it, be approaching it, or not yet meeting it. So when we design assessments, that's what we're trying to understand, is has the student actually met the full standard? And as we've been working with teacher leaders on this requirement and looking at grade scales, currently we are still using a 70 as passing, which correlates more to in the kind of category of approaching the standard, not all the way meeting. So there has been pretty deep conversation. I do think Sheila or Greg could speak a little bit more to this. But I think what teachers have made very clear is that there's a lot of work we need to continue to invest in doing to have sufficient supports that will get students all the way to full mastery or meeting of the standard. And so that's why we're saying we're going to continue to push that and do ultimately expect that all students meet or master the standard, not just pass it with a 70. But this was a reflection of our current state and the fact that we have quite a bit of work to do to get the whole system functioning so that in fact, all students can meet all the standards. Okay, thumbs up from them.
Thank you. You've mastered it.
Thank you.
The other question I have was actually on the bullet just previous to that, around the removing of the requirement to track learning experiences.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand what's going on there. So does this mean that any documentation or tracking of extended learning would happen only in the senior year, sort of in preparation for the diploma? And I guess my concern, if that's the case, is that it would be sort of an opportunity for I guess you're not having that conversation earlier on so that you could address anything.
Yeah, and let me speak to that a little bit. And again, any one of you can pop up. You want to come up here? Yeah, why don't you take that one?
Good evening. So to back up a sec, the concept of learning experiences was language from the state that was required in the graduation policies and doesn't kind of correspond necessarily to what we all might think of as learning experiences. And it was meant to be something, in the state policy there was, the idea of meeting standards, and then there was this separate thing that they called learning experiences. And in essence it was, in case somebody met all their graduation standards by junior year, they still, in senior year, had to have a learning experience in math, science, English, and social studies. It was never defined if there was even any academic content to that concept. So what we're proposing in this draft, or you guys are proposing, is that just that concept, as the way the state defined it, disappears. We still love extended learning opportunities. We're going to promote that. Kids 9 through 12 could be doing that, and there will be a structured way for kids to earn, meet graduation standards, to earn what we'd call UPS through extended learning opportunities. It's just this idea of learning experience, which is no longer a part of state law, just be banished, because it was a bit silly to have to document this thing in addition to the more substantive documentation of graduation standards, which actually measures what kids know and are able to do.
Good. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Where's my cheat sheet? Perfect. Thank you, Malia. Excellent. Is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any further board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of revising policy IKF, graduation requirements, please indicate. It's unanimous. Excellent. New business, consideration and action to authorize superintendent or designee to begin the hiring process on June 19th, 2019 through August 5th, 2019 for all budgeted vacancies without seeking prior school board approval to advertise.
You need a motion.
Yeah, is there a motion? Ms. Trevorrow, second by Ms. Davis. Will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
So this is an annual ritual at our last board meeting before the July break, and this authorizes me to go ahead and advertise positions as they come, and to be able to interview and make offers, and then the board ratifies those hires at the first August meeting.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? None. All those in favor of excuse me. Where am I at?
Authorizing the superintendent.
Yep, authorizing, sorry, I got another typo here. All those in favor of authorizing the superintendent or designee to begin the hiring process of June 19th on June 19th, 2019 through August 5th, 2019 for all budgeted vacancies without seeking prior school board approval to authorize, please indicate. It's unanimous. Thank you all. Next, we have a first read on the policy BCF, Advisory Committees and Regulation, BCF-R. No comments on first. Personnel items. Sorry, guys. Which one do I read? Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed. Election of probationary teachers. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Ms. Trevorrow. Superintendent, speak to the motion.
So you have a number of appointments that are being brought forward of probationary teachers, and those are all positions that are vacancies, either new positions in the budget or vacancies that have occurred over the course of the spring.
Excellent. Any board discussion or any questions? Any public comment? There are no public comments on personnel items. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the personnel items listed, election of probationary teachers, please indicate. It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, I know I skipped something. I'm moving back. Administrative acknowledgement. It's an agenda item is a formal announcement of newly hired district positions that do not require board vote. Would the superintendent please speak to the motion?
And that is the position of the Executive Director for Budget and Finance, Miranda Fasula, who all of the board members met earlier, and Ms. Trevorrow acknowledged in her budget report, was here today for our Finance Committee meeting, the transition from the 2020 to the 2021 budget cycle. And so Ms. Fasula had to leave. She is commuting still, and so she got a head start on that because of the darkness. So, but we're very, very fortunate to have Miranda join us, and looking forward to her contributions to the Portland Public Schools.
Excellent. Thank you, Superintendent. Next, given that it's before the hour of 10 p.m., is there any public comment on items not listed on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn the business meeting? Mr. Balfan, second by Ms. Davis. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.